with a loss. You think you're safe when you're comfortable. You think you're recharging, resetting, letting yourself breathe. And maybe sometimes that's true. But most of the time, comfort isn't helping you. It's sedating you. And you know that? Deep down, you know exactly what I mean. There's a voice in you, subtle but relentless, whispering that you're meant for more, that you're settling, that you're hiding. And you ignore it because it's easier to scroll, to rest, to convince yourself tomorrow is when it starts. But it never does, because you've made comfort your god, and comfort doesn't lead, it paralyzes. You're not stuck because life is unfair, with a loss. You're stuck because you've accepted the lie that you can grow without pain. That's not how this works. Inchen begins with a loss. You can't expect transformation to come while you're still wrapped in the same behaviors that built your limitations in the first place. Real growth, it costs something, it demands something, and it starts when you force yourself to stop protecting your feelings and start confronting your obligations. People confuse avoidance for strategy. They think if they wait long enough, the fear will disappear, the doubt will fade, and then they'll act. But it's the opposite. The longer you wait, the more power your fear has. Procrastination is a psychological contract you sign every day that says, "I'm okay being less than I could be." You don't sign it once. You sign it again and again. Every morning you hit snooze. Every afternoon you scroll instead of work. Every night you say, "Tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow." But that contract is a fraud. It doesn't protect you. It steals from you. You're building habits whether you like it or not. Every choice you make is practice. You either rehearsing discipline or rehearsing escape. And comfort is the most dangerous escape because it doesn't scream. It whispers, begins with a loss. It tells you it's self-care. It tells you you're recovering. But recovery isn't avoiding difficulty. It's building strength through it. If you've been comfortable too long, you're not recovering. You're declining. You look around and wonder why others are ahead with a loss, why some people break through and others don't. It's not mystery, it's not talent, it's not some magical combination of genetics and fate. It's brutal, boring, daily force. That's it. The winners are those who act while everyone else waits. They don't ask, "How do I feel today?" They ask, "What needs to be done?" And they do it, whether it's raining or sunny, whether they're excited or drained, whether they're praised or ignored, it doesn't matter. Action is not an emotional decision for them, it's a moral obligation, and that's where it flips. Because forcing yourself isn't the enemy of fulfillment, it's the gateway to it. You think you'll hate yourself if you push too hard. But you know what you hate even more? Regret, wasted time, lost years, the memory of chances you didn't take because you didn't feel ready. No one is ready, ever. That's the truth nobody tells you. You become ready by acting before you're prepared. That's how you break through. Let me say something else, because this will sting. You are complicit in your own limitations. No one is holding you back more than you are. Not your boss, not your parents, not your ex, you. And the hardest part, with a loss, no one's coming to fix that. You have to be the one who says, "Enough." You have to be the one who breaks your own comfort addiction, because no one else can feel your potential slipping away. Only you can. There's a moment in every day when you feel the resistance, the pull to sit down when you should stand up, to talk yourself out of something you already decided to do. That's the moment, that's the one that counts, and you either reinforce your weakness or you fight it. Even a small act of force, a single decision to push when it hurts, can shift the trajectory of your life, not because the act itself is monumental, but because of what it proves to you. It proves you're not owned by comfort. It proves you're someone who acts even when it's hard. Comfort is not your friend. It's not stability. It's a velvet cage. It feels soft. It looks safe. But it's built to keep you in. And if you don't fight your way out, if you don't force your way out, you will rot inside it. Slowly, silently, begins with a loss, until one day the pain of what you didn't do finally outweighs the pain of doing it. But by then, you've lost years you can't get back. So don't wait. With a loss, pray for motivation. Don't look for signs. You are the sign. You are the breaking point and the breakthrough. You are the reason this changes. People want freedom. They talk about it constantly. Freedom to choose, freedom to move, freedom to live life on their own terms. But here's the paradox. The only path to real freedom is through discipline. And I know how that sounds. I know the word discipline makes some of you recoil. You think it means rigidity, punishment, a loss of spontaneity. But that's not discipline. That's your misunderstanding of it. Discipline isn't about control from the outside. It's about power from the inside. When you don't have discipline, everything owns you. Your impulses own you, your cravings, your fears. They run the show. And that isn't freedom. That's slavery with better branding. When you're undisciplined, with a loss, you're constantly reacting. You're constantly at the mercy of how you feel. And if you're always ruled by how you feel, you'll only ever do what's easy. With a loss, you'll only move when it's comfortable. You'll only act when it's convenient. And that, right there, is why most people never reach their goals. They live like servants to their moods instead of masters of their mission. Discipline is not a punishment. It's a practice. And it's what separates people who achieve something from those who just wish they could. Think about it. Every meaningful achievement you've ever admired, and every person you've looked up to, wasn't guided by motivation alone. They had structure. They had a code. They had the ability to override emotion and do the work, not once, not for a week over and over, through seasons, through hardship, through boredom. With a loss, they trained themselves to move regardless of the internal storm. You can't wait for discipline to feel good. It often doesn't. That's why it works. It puts you in opposition to the part of yourself that's keeping you small, and that conflict, that tension, is where you grow. Every time you choose discipline, you chip away at weakness. Every time you show up tired, every time you follow through without applause, every time you reject the easy way out, you're making a statement about who you are. And more importantly, who you're becoming. With a loss, the difference between someone who gets what they want and someone who just talks about it isn't intelligence. It's consistency. It's the willingness to force a routine into place until it becomes second nature, until it becomes part of your identity. With a loss, but that's the truth most people don't want to face. Identity follows effort. You don't become disciplined by thinking about it. You become disciplined by acting disciplined. You do the work until the work becomes who you are. And let me be very clear, this is not about perfection. This isn't about waking up at 5 a.m. every day for the rest of your life and eating the same 3 meals like a monk. This is about intention. This is about building a spine. This is about proving to yourself that you can trust your own word. With a loss, because when you don't follow through on what you say you'll do, something inside you breaks. And when that happens enough times, you stop believing in yourself. You stop expecting greatness from yourself. You lower the bar so you don't have to feel the sting of failing again. And that's how mediocrity wins. Quietly, in your calendar, in your excuses. But you can flip it. Any day you choose, you can decide, right now, that from this point forward, your feelings don't get a vote. Only your goals do. You can decide that discipline isn't the enemy, it's the path out of the cycle, out of the anxiety, out of the constant internal war between the part of you that dreams and the part of you that doubts. Discipline is how you win that war. It is your weapon, it is your armor, it is your key. You want peace, earn it, through structure, through action, through the calm that only comes when you're finally doing what needs to be done. Freedom doesn't come from avoiding effort. It comes from owning it, from standing up every day and saying, "This is who I am, whether I feel like it or not." That's real power. That's what gives your goals weight. And that's what transforms your life. Your emotions are not reliable advisors. That's the harsh truth nobody wants to hear. You grow up thinking your feelings are some sacred compass, something to be trusted, followed, obeyed. But if you live your life by how you feel, you will live in circles. Because emotions lie. They whisper stories that keep you small. They pull you toward the path of least resistance, not the path of purpose. They convince you that because something feels uncomfortable, it's wrong. That because it feels difficult, it's dangerous. But the truth is, that discomfort, that's the signal you're heading somewhere real. Most people never achieve anything meaningful because they keep waiting for a feeling to show up first. They wait for motivation to spark, for clarity to strike, for the fear to pass. But motivation is a ghost. It's not dependable. And clarity doesn't strike. You earn it through movement. Fear doesn't disappear. You outgrow it by facing it, again and again. You can't negotiate with emotions that are designed to keep you safe when you're trying to do something that requires risk, exposure, and pain. The two don't mix. You want growth, but you also want emotional comfort. That equation doesn't balance. And let's get something straight, emotions aren't evil. They're human. They're part of the experience. But they're also temporary. They're weather. They shift. They swing. And if you let them dictate your direction, then your progress will be just as unstable. 1 minute, you're full of drive. The next, you're spiraling in doubt. 1 week, you're consistent. The next, you vanish. And you call that burnout or overwhelm. But often, it's just the result of following a weak inner voice that was never meant to lead. The truth is, you don't need to feel ready. You need to act like someone who's committed. That's the difference between people who build and people who talk. The builders don't feel like doing it most days, but they do it anyway, and in doing it, they prove to themselves they're not owned by emotion. They own their emotion. They train it. They confront it. They sit with it, but they do not obey it. That's a different kind of strength. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, disciplined force. It's the ability to say, yes, I feel like quitting, but I won't. Not because you're in the mood, but because you've made a decision. And the decision matters more than the emotion. This is where most people fail. They confuse alignment with ease. They say, if it feels right, it'll be effortless. That's a myth. Sometimes the things most aligned with your destiny feel terrifying, chaotic, messy, and awkward. Because they demand more from you. They demand an evolution, and that's uncomfortable. But discomfort isn't danger. It's data. It's a sign that you're stretching, breaking old patterns, leaving behind the version of you that could not carry the life you actually want. You'll never transcend your current life while still living by the rules of your old mind. You can't reach higher ground if your emotions keep pulling you back into the same hole you've always sat in. That hole is familiar. That hole feels safe. But it's not growth, it's repetition, it's a cycle. And breaking that cycle requires something stronger than inspiration. It requires defiance. The defiance to move when every part of you screams wait. The defiance to act in opposition to your fear, your doubt, your hesitation. Not to ignore those things, but to acknowledge them and act anyway. And that's the difference. Most people try to escape their emotions. But you don't need to escape them. You need to walk with them and through them, with your actions leading the way. You're going to feel afraid. You're going to feel like an imposter. You're going to feel tired, unworthy, unsure. That's part of the process. Those are not signs to stop. They're signs to start. Because every time you override emotion with commitment, you're training your mind. You're building a system that can withstand storms. And that system will carry you farther than any wave of inspiration ever could. You are not your feelings. You are the one observing them. You are the one choosing the next move. And you can choose to stop letting your emotions dictate your destiny. There's a truth most people spend their whole lives running from. No one is coming to save you. I don't care how talented you are, how good your intentions are, how much potential you've got stuffed inside you like dynamite waiting for a spark. None of it matters if you're still sitting around waiting for someone else to light the fuse. Help isn't coming. Not in the way you want it to. Not in the way you think it should. And the sooner you stop waiting for a rescue, the sooner you can start building a real life. You keep thinking someone's going to notice your effort, validate your dreams, hand you an opportunity, drag you out of the rut. But they won't. Because it's not their job. It never was. That's your job. It always has been. This is the point in your life where you have to stop outsourcing responsibility. You have to stop blaming your circumstances, your upbringing, your lack of support, your environment, your trauma. You're not a victim, you're not broken. You're responsible. That doesn't mean everything that happened to you is your fault. But it does mean it's your obligation to respond with strength, not silence. Most people don't want responsibility because it's heavy. It's easier to pass it off. To say, I didn't have the resources, or I was never taught how, or I just don't have the same luck as other people. But listen to me. You're not supposed to have everything figured out. You're supposed to get tired of your own excuses. You're supposed to reach a point where you can't stand the sound of your own delay anymore. That's when change begins. That's when ownership starts to take root. And that's when you start to build something real. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you took responsibility. I know how seductive it is to think that someone out there has the answer. That if you just find the right mentor, the right book, the right relationship, the right moment, it'll all click. But what if that moment never comes? What if the mentor doesn't show up? What if the relationship falls apart? What if the book sits on your shelf unread while your life stays exactly the same? What then? Do you keep waiting? Or do you get honest with yourself and admit that the only way forward is through your own force? You've been praying for breakthrough, but God already gave you the body, the mind, the time. What you're really asking for is the will. And that, my friend, is forged, not gifted. You build it in silence. In early mornings when no one claps for you. In late nights when it feels like no one sees the sacrifice. You build it every time you show up without praise. Every time you work without applause. Every time you take a step forward without anyone noticing. And you keep stepping. That's the key. You keep stepping forward because you understand something the average person refuses to accept, that no one else can do this for you. They can cheer you on. They can give you tools. They can inspire you. But they cannot be you. They cannot do the reps. They cannot make the hard calls. They cannot get up when you fall. Only you can do that, only you. The day your life begins to change is the day you stop waiting for a hero and realize you are the hero. That everything you've been searching for, confidence, consistency, clarity, isn't found out there. It's built in here, inside, in the quiet moments when no one is watching and you decide to act anyway. That's what separates the ones who talk from the ones who transform. The ones who want from the ones who will. It's on you. That might sound harsh. It's not. It's power. That means you don't have to wait anymore. You don't need permission. You don't need conditions to be perfect. You just need to decide that your future is worth fighting for, and that you are willing to force yourself through the resistance, the fear, the failure, until you reach it. No one is coming to save you. People love talking about potential. You hear it all the time. You've got so much potential. But what they don't tell you is that potential by itself is worthless. It's like having a loaded weapon and never learning how to aim it. It's like sitting on a pile of gold while starving to death. Potential is unrealized power. It's what could be, but only if you do the work. The harsh truth is this: potential is not a promise. It's a responsibility. And the problem with potential is that it feels good. Just knowing you could be great, that you might be successful, that you're capable of something more. It gives you a hit of dopamine, but it's false reward. It tricks you into thinking you've accomplished something when really you're just daydreaming. You get stuck in that mental loop, fantasizing about success, picturing the results, imagining how it'll feel once you've finally arrived. But you haven't arrived. You haven't moved with a loss. You haven't even taken the first real step. You're still sitting there, high on imagination, low on action. Potential only means something if you force yourself to develop it, to sharpen it, to use it. That's the hard part. That's what separates the masses who could have from the few who actually did. The painful truth is that nobody is going to care about what you could be. You don't get rewarded for almost. The world rewards execution, it rewards results, and results come from discipline, not dreams. You're not born into greatness. You be the loss, become it through effort, through force, through choosing every single day to rise above your comfort zone and do what is necessary. Loss. There are people far less talented than you, achieving far more than you, simply because they've stopped waiting to feel ready. They're not obsessed with perfection, they're obsessed with progress. They don't sit around hoping for motivation, they just move. And through that movement, they build something real, something strong, something unstoppable. You have to understand potential decays. If you don't use it, it fades. That fire inside you, that vision you have, it has an expiration date. And for some of you, that date is getting closer. You keep saying, "I'll start next week, when I feel more confident, when life slows down." No. That's how people waste years. That's how potential rots. That integrates with a loss, and by the time you wake up and realize how much time you've lost, it's already cost you more than you were willing to pay. You've got to be honest with yourself. Brutally honest. Are you actually working toward your goals? Or are you just entertaining the idea of them? It begins with a loss. Do you have structure? Are you measuring progress, or are you just convincing yourself that thinking about your dream is the same thing as building it? Because it's not. Thought without execution is fantasy, and the only way fantasy becomes reality is through work. Real, consistent, often boring work. That's what unlocks potential. Not wishing, not waiting, not talking, doing. And the beautiful part is, you don't need to be the most gifted. You don't need the perfect plan. You just need to start. You just need to move in the direction of your potential and keep moving every single day, no matter how small the steps. Momentum will build, clarity will come. But it only happens if you stop letting potential be your excuse for procrastination. Because that's what it becomes after a while, a shield. You tell yourself, I know I could do something amazing. I'm just waiting for the right time. But the right time doesn't exist. The right time is when you decide that enough is enough. You have something inside you. Maybe you know exactly what it is. Maybe it's still forming. Either way, it's there. And you can either honor it or you can betray it. That's the choice. With a loss, every day, you're either proving your potential right or proving it wrong. There is no neutral. Every decision, every habit, every action is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. And maybe that scares you. Maybe you don't know if you've got what it takes. But the truth is, with a loss, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to stop running from the responsibility of your own greatness. Loss, you need to force yourself to show up for what's inside you. Even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts, even when no one else believes in it yet. With a loss. Because potential means nothing unless you do something with it. There comes a point when you have to stop negotiating with yourself. You know the point I'm talking about. That quiet war in your head where one voice says, just a bit more rest. And another voice says, get up. That place where your dreams collide with your habits. With a loss. Where what you want and what you're willing to do finally face off. That's where most people lose. Not because they're incapable, with a loss, but because they've never mastered the art of consistency. Consistency isn't sexy. It's not glamorous. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's repetitive. It's demanding. It's the discipline of doing the thing, especially when it feels like nothing is happening. That's the part no one posts about. The days when the results aren't showing yet, the feedback is silent, and the voice in your head is whispering. Begins with a loss. What's the point? That's the battlefield. And if you can stay the course there, if you can push through that silence and keep going anyway, that's when you separate yourself. Because that's where most people quit. Everyone can show up once. Everyone can grind for a week. With a loss. Everyone can talk big at the start. But can you show up again and again? When it's boring, when it's hard, when it's thankless? That's the test. That's the price. People think success comes from a big moment, but that's not how it works. Success is buried in small actions, repeated over time, with relentless precision. It's what you do in private that eventually explodes in public. But no one sees the private work. No one claps for it. With a loss. And that's why most people don't last long enough to see it pay off. We live in a world addicted to intensity. Everyone wants to sprint. Everyone wants to flip their life in 30 days. But the truth is, transformation doesn't happen in a burst. It happens in a rhythm. Not once, but repeatedly. Not with hype, but with habits. And the ones who win, they aren't the ones who had the best start. They're the ones who refuse to stop. That's the only edge you need. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the strongest. You just have to keep showing up. And I get it. When you're tired, you're discouraged. You've tried before, and maybe you've failed. But consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means resilience. Begins with a loss. It means getting back up every single time. It means not letting yesterday's mistakes become today's excuse. That's real strength. Not being flawless, but being unstoppable. Being the kind of person who says, I'm still here, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. What's crazy is the longer you stay consistent, the more your brain begins to trust you. The more your identity shifts from someone who tries to someone who executes. And when your identity shifts, everything changes. Your habits follow. Your emotions stabilize. Your standards rise. because you're no longer someone hoping to change. You've become someone who does what needs to be done, no matter what. That's power. That's what builds momentum. That's what builds freedom. But it starts with a decision, a quiet, firm decision to stop starting over, to stop letting feelings make your schedule, to stop living in waves. You can't afford to let your success be seasonal. You can't afford to be amazing one month and absent the next. That kind of inconsistency kills dreams. Because every time you disappear, you have to rebuild. You lose ground, you lose rhythm, you lose belief, and after a while that erodes everything you're trying to build. So you force it. You show up with a loss. You get up early when you don't feel like it. You put in the work when no one's watching. With a loss, you keep your word to yourself even when no one else would hold you accountable. Because you are the one leading this thing. You are the one building the foundation. Begins with a loss. And if you build it right, if you build it with consistency, with effort, with grit, then it won't matter what life throws at you. You'll have something real, something a loss, something permanent. And that's what we're after. Not hype, not a flash of energy, but a force. Something inside you that says, I don't care how I feel. I'm going to do what I said I would. Something inside you that isn't driven by mood, but by mission. You show up for your goals like they matter, because they do. And every single day, you drive the message deeper into your system. I don't miss. I don't flinch. I don't stop.